and I'm doing a project in my fifth wheel. I have a Volante 3851 FL. It's built by Crossroads. It's a 42-foot fifth wheel with 5 slides. So if you're trying to do the same project in the same model, you got lucky. But what it is I'm trying to do a off-grid system with a battery bank and an inverter and a solar system. And the reason why I'm making this video is because I found a lot of informational videos on YouTube, but they were all with the 30 amp RVs. So I was trying to do something along the lines of a 50 amp, just because there's some pretty significant differences between the 30 and the 50. It's beyond a difference of 20 amps. It's actually a difference of about 100 amps. Because 50 amp RVs have two 50 amp poles, so it's actually a 100 amp service, not a difference of 20. So being those differences, there's a lot of different equipment that you need to have, because you'll notice if you watch some of the 30 amp RV guys do their videos, their inverters are quite a bit smaller than this one. So I'm just going to run through the equipment that I have. We're going to do a little installation. I'm not an electrician, I'm a mechanic. So it's kind of a learning curve for me and you both. So we're going to figure some things out along the ways. Hopefully I can show you what not to do, but more what to do. So we'll just kind of start with what I got here. The first one is actually the battery. So this is a lithium iron phosphate battery. I bought this from techdirect.com. So what they do with this battery is they take used Nissan Leaf batteries, these are second life lithium ion batteries, and they reconfigure them in this case with a BMS on the front, and they sell them at a pretty reasonable price. When I bought this for $625, and this battery holds 2,800 usable watts. So the difference when I was looking at batteries, I was actually looking at the Ames battery. It's a 12 volt, 100 amp hour battery, so it holds 1,200 watts total. Those were about $800. So when I did the math on it, it came out to about 76 cents per watt of storage. And the battery rate weighed right around 33 pounds. So then when I did the math on how many watts per pound of battery I can get, I got 40 watts per pound of battery at $800, which came out to 76 cents. This battery here weighs just a little bit over 71 pounds at $625, and that's tax and shipping. The $800 for the Ames off of Amazon, that's just the battery. You still got to pay tax. It was Prime, so it's free shipping. This battery here came out to it was like 23.5 cents, so we'll call it 24 cents per watt of storage. So pretty significant savings there. And at 71 pounds and 2,800 watts, it also came right around 40 watts per pound of battery. So it was the same. And I wanted to make sure that if I was buying a used lithium ion battery, that I didn't have to have so many batteries to make up for the loss, that it would just weigh too much. But as far as like watts and weight, it was actually the same as buying brand new. So techdirect.com, they say these will last for at least 5 years before it gets to that point where it's worth replacing. So two of these batteries, about two of them for now, I'm going to do a total of 4, but right now I have 2, so I have 5,600 watts. The cost to run these for at least 5 years, even if they wore out at 5 years and I swapped them out and bought 2 more again, or 4 more if I go ahead and finish the project, the cost of buying it twice at the end of 10 years is still half the cost of buying brand new batteries one time. So a lot of thousands of dollars saved there. This is already, I'm doing a 48 volt system, DC. These already come pre-wired as 48 volts. So you can parallel in series the 12 volt lithium ion batteries. Ames says that you can run up to 4 batteries in a series. The BMS, some of the reviews, some people are having problems with the BMS. The battery will do it, but there are some negatives, there are some drawbacks to it. But the biggest thing was it would tap out at 4 batteries per string, and then you start getting a lot of different strings. These right out of the box, 48 volts. The other really nice thing to do is there's no terminal connectors on top of the battery, so you're not trying to crisscross running in series and parallels. So what they do is they supply the cord, and it has this nice little tab here that you pull out, and it goes right here in the front. You can see right where it shows the red and the black. You simply just pop it in there, and then that's it. That's connecting your battery, and then you run this to your bus bar or your inverter, however you want to do it. The battery comes with a breaker on the BMS. So when it actually kicks on, it has a little battery meter. I don't know if you can see it in the video, but I can get you a little closer later on in the video. It'll show the capacity of how much is left. It'll show you the volts of what's in there. So it's really good. And you don't have to run these in series because they're already 48 volts. So you're just running them in a parallel. And what I did here is I bought 2 bus bars. So all these batteries are going to connect right to the bus bar. One for negative, one for positive. Once all your batteries connect to this bus bar, your inverter here will connect to the larger terminals. That's what will actually supply it. Each battery puts out, the label on the side says each battery will safely put out continuous 2,000 watts per hour. Right now I have 2, I'm going to do 4. So the battery output is more than safe for what the inverter can do. So moving on to this right here, this is a 1500 watt 48 volt charger. This is safe on these lithiums as long as you have BMS. If you don't have BMS, this is not safe to use. So we're safe with this one. So what I want to do is I want to take a extension cord, plug it into this adapter that I bought here. So it has a male connector on the side. So what this will allow me to do is take an extension cord, plug it into a wall somewhere, run it over to the side of the RV, plug the extension cord into the side of the RV, and then that will run the power to these 3 terminal lugs here. That'll supply it. And this is a pretty dumb charger. There's no screens, there's no settings. It just puts out the voltage that it needs to charge this battery, and then that's it. It's a set it and forget it type thing. And that'll charge all of your batteries. This inverter here is a 6,000 watt 2-pole 120 volt 240 volt inverter. Looking at the RV and what it could do, so it's a 2-pole 50 amp RV. Each pole in this is 25 amps of a total of 50 amps. When I was looking at the distribution panel on my RV, there was a lot of stuff. It's pretty even. So one pole on the breaker box had like a air conditioner, a fireplace, which is also a heater. It had that on one pole, washer dryer. Same thing on the other pole. It had one AC, refrigerator. So when I did the math on what I was trying to do, each pole would never really exceed the 25 amps that each leg puts out on this. And it's important to remember it's a 50 amp 6,000 watt inverter, but each pole only puts out 3,000 watts together. But running my AC, I'm not going to run the air conditioner and the heater at the same time. It just doesn't make sense. When you're plugged into a 50 amp shore power, you can pretty much turn anything on that you want and you're not going to blow the breaker. It's nice to do, I guess, if you really wanted to, but when you're on off the grid, running off of batteries and solar, it just doesn't make sense to do it anyways. So really it didn't make sense to buy a bigger, they had a bigger 12,000 watt, Ames actually sold it, a bigger, or SunGold inverters. They had a 12,000 watt inverter, so each pole put out 50 amps, but that inverter weighed 196 pounds. It was a pretty big inverter. This one here weighs 71 pounds, and it's a charger inverter. So the charger puts out, I believe, 2,600 watts. So it's in continuous 6,000 watts also. It surges up to 18,000 watts for 20 whole seconds. So again, more than enough for what I'm trying to do. I want to be able to run both air conditioners and at least my refrigerator, I have a residential grade refrigerator. It's not the propane refrigerator that most RVs come with, so I have to have power constantly to my fridge. This will run the entire RV. And as you can see in the video, it looks big in the video, but when you actually get it in person and you're actually looking at it, especially when you're trying to pick it up and move it, this is a big, heavy inverter. And this will do the trick. The cables that it came with, it was supplied with cables. These are 6-gauge cables. Looking at them, my initial reaction was these actually feel pretty small. They don't really feel adequate for having 6,000 watts of 48 volt DC go through them. This is what the manufacturer gave me. I think just for my own comfort level and just for a little bit less resistance in the cables, I'll probably go up to a little bit bigger gauge. I'll use what they gave me, but I might end up just swapping these out. The rest of it over here is this is a 50 amp transfer switch. So what I'm going to do, I'll show you the inside. This is what the inside of the transfer switch looks like. So you'll have, let me get this right. So shore power. So shore power is right here on the bottom. Your shore power comes in, and if you don't have your generator hooked up or your inverter running, it'll just pass straight through. The RV will act like nothing, no other equipment's installed in the RV. If your inverter's on and you shut the shore power off, or power goes out, or you just don't have power at all, it'll automatically switch over to the inverter, still supplying the power to the RV. It has, I believe, a 6 millisecond transfer time. So if you're running computers, TVs, even lights, nothing will flicker, nothing will turn off. It'll transfer that fast to where you won't have any interruption in time. This cost $150 off of Amazon, but I actually ended up getting this on the Amazon warehouse deals. If you're not familiar with the Amazon warehouse deals, it's actually a pretty good hookup. All that was damaged was the box. So the actual product itself was okay. I mean, I looked it over pretty well. It's brand new. It was still even wrapped in its shrink plastic. Simply the box being damaged on a corner, it wasn't qualified for selling as new, so they sold it as used, and they knocked off 30 bucks. There's a couple other things here. If you want to shop and actually be a budget shopper in this is a pretty expensive toy we're trying to build here. If you do the Amazon warehouse deals, you can find some pretty cheap stuff. There was a couple inverters that I almost bought, but they didn't quite have all the specs that I wanted, and they knocked like a couple $100 off just because of the Amazon warehouse deals. Somebody would get it, they didn't really like it, and they shipped it back, and they just passed the savings on. The next piece of this is, it's optional, but it's a good thing to have. So this is a meter that allows you to monitor the state of charge of your batteries. So it comes with a 300 amp DC shunt. And this little screen here, I'm going to mount this next to my panels that have like water tank levels, lights turning on and off, circuit breakers. So that'll tell me how many volts, it'll tell me how many watts are left in the batteries. So once you get it all calibrated and you get it all set up, you'll know exactly where you are. Between the two chargers, so the 2800 watts right around there, charger, plus this 1500 watt charger here, it'll keep track of what's going in and out of the battery. An important thing to remember with these inverter chargers, and I tried as hard as I could to find an inverter that would charge and invert at the same time. I couldn't find one. So what happens is when you supply AC power to this, it will turn the inverter off and turn it into a charger. Whatever power is left over, that will be passed through the inverter to the automatic transfer switch and into the trailer. The reason why I wanted to invert and charge at the same time, which is the reason why I got this, is because when I'm going on vacation and I'm pulling up to somebody's house, I'm not actually at an RV park, like if I'm just at somebody's front yard, and all they have is a 15 amp extension cord, I still want to be able to run everything that I had on that. So by taking the extension cord, plugging it into the RV, it trickle charges into the battery, and trickle charging at 1500 watts, so it's not really trickle charging, but it keeps these floated up at full power at 1500 rate of 1500 watts. I could still have a 50 amp service being plugged into a drop cord. Pretty cool, I think. And then once I don't have it yet, this will be kind of phase 2 of the project. Once I get the solar panels, I'm doing 3000 watts of solar panels on the roof. I'll do the video on when I show how to set up the charge controller. The charge controller will also plug into the bus bar. The reason why I want to plug everything into the bus bar is because I want the inverter to have the chance to use power from the charger or the solar charger. I want to have it to have first priority over that before it actually goes to the battery. And it just makes everything easier just having everything going to the bus bar. So from there, we will start looking at diagrams. I made a whole schematic of how I'm going to set everything up in the end. I don't have all the equipment. I'm going to start off small and kind of work my way there, trial and error. Make sure I don't overdo anything. I was going to do 2 of these chargers, so that way if I had my generator running, I could plug both chargers in at the same time and have 3000 watts recharge. But I ended up deciding to scale that back just for now. I figured a single extension cord would be sufficient. So from there, I'll give you guys a run through on the schematic, and that way you guys can get a better understanding of this overall project. So here is a rough overview of the system that I'm trying to build. In the center here shows the automatic transfer switch, and I do apologize because the original transfer switch that I was going to buy looked like this, but I ended up switching models to the Furrion F50 ATS, and because it's a little bit different setup, it looks a little bit different, but the concept is still the same. So you have your shore power. It's either your 30 or your 50 amp. That'll come inside your automatic transfer switch. And from there, it starts to get a little bit complicated with all the wires. But the first hot will come on the in. The second hot will go to the other in. Your neutral, the green, will also follow on the end. And your ground will go off to your ground. When it comes out, it's the same thing. It just passes through. Comes over here to your 50 amp shore power. On the inverter side, the power also comes in, and when it switches over, it passes to the AC panel. Some of the differences are, if you look at the inverter charger, it only takes the power on the out of the shore power. The reason why I did that, I'm sorry, on the in of the shore power. The reason why I did the in of the shore power only was because if I put it on the out, the inverter would constantly go into a loop because it senses the AC power and it's always trying to charge itself, so it would go back and forth. So the terminals, or the wires, would plug into the terminals on the shore power in. That way the inverter will only charge when actually plugged into AC power from shore power. One thing that I might do is put a trigger box that would turn the inverter charger on and off. So that way if I connect to my 3500 watt generator, it's not taking 2800 watts from the generator and trying to charge. If my load is too high, I won't be able to do both. So I might put a trigger box to where I could turn the AC in on and off on the charger. You can see the battery bank. It's actually going to be about 11,200 watts when it's done, but I just rounded down to 10,000 watts. That'll come through your battery monitor, your shunt system, so where that'll follow down, plug in there. You could follow that along, plugs into the transfer switch. These are these battery chargers that I showed you, these dumb 1500 watt chargers. I show 2 of them here because my plan is to put 2. I'm not sure if I will yet, but right now I just have the 1. So if I only do the 1, it's just me plugging the drop cord directly into it, and it charges the battery, goes through to the inverter, to the transfer switch, out into a 50 amp power source. If I were to do the 2 like I plan, I'm going to have 2 power sources coming in, and I want to be able to control those on and off inside the trailer. So that way, if I only want to run one or the other, or both, I could do that with a trigger box. Same thing down here. The trigger box for the charge controller on the inverter, that'll be turned on and off with a relay. That way the AC input function, coming back over here on the inverter itself, this is your AC input. It's only a hot and a neutral, 120 volts. If you can turn that on and off, that's the AC input that the inverter senses to start charging. The others is your hot 1, your neutral, your hot 2, and your ground, which are your 4 typical wires that you have going to your AC panel from shore power. So by terminating that 120 volts with the trigger box, that'll turn the charge function on and off from the inverter charger. This is pretty much what I'm going to shoot for. Things might change a little bit, but at least you could see on paper what the system is supposed to look like and how it's supposed to function. Alright, so went to Lowe's, got some more parts, and I was beginning to set up the automatic transfer switch. So I bought my 3-wire with a ground. This is 50 amp wire, which is significantly bigger than what the inverter needs, because the inverter only needs 25 amps per line. I still went ahead and did the 50 amp per line, just as the RV still has, just to be safe. The other thing I did too was, this was the 48 volt battery cable that they supplied with the inverter. I really didn't feel like this was sufficient enough to carry 6,000 watts of DC. So I went ahead and opted, and I got this much bigger. I believe this is 2-aught wire. So that's a lot more substantial. Looking at the automatic transfer switch and also reading the instruction booklet from Furrion, one little disappointment that I ran across was right on the inside of the panel and also on the front of the panel. It says do not transfer any loads or do not transfer inputs while under load, and it specifically states air conditioning units, which I kind of thought was a little bit of a disappointment because, you know, you want it to be automatic. So if your grid goes down and it switches over to your inverter automatically, I mean, you want everything to just seamlessly carry over. You can't really go around and shut air conditioning off before the grid fails. So I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know if it's just a precautionary type warning that Furrion put in there, but right now what it's saying is shut everything off in your RV and then switch loads and then turn it all back on again, which doesn't really make sense. But moving on from that, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. The other thing that I was looking at here in the instruction booklet was how it would take priority. So the transfer switch, the way that it's wired, you take it here, you get your shore power input on this side, generator up input on this side and then your line out. So what it wants to do is it wants to take generator priority. So the generator is actually going to be the inverter. And then shore power is secondary primary. So if I always have my inverter running and I pull into an RV park and I connect to a 50 amp output or a 50 amp shore power, it's never going to switch over because it's always taking the inverter priority, which isn't what I want it to do. When I connect to shore power at an RV park, I want it to switch off the inverter and my batteries and go to the shore power. So what I'm probably going to end up doing is actually just wiring it backwards, actually, as shady as that sounds. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wire in my shore power to the generator input. And I'll even put this here so it makes a little bit more sense. Right here. So I'm going to wire in my shore power on the generator and my inverter on the shore power. So that way, since the inverter, or since the, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting English today. Since the automatic transfer switch is generator priority, so this terminal right here is the priority, that's where I'm going to put shore power. And since this is secondary, that's where I'm going to put the inverter. So that way, every time I connect to shore power, it automatically takes this one and puts my inverter to rest. So here's the 50 amp AC panel with all your breakers. And how you get this out is you just simply take your cover off. And there's 4 machine screws that hold this in. Once you get this plate out, there'll be 4 more wood screws. Now that all 4 wood screws are undone, and double making sure that the power is off, this is where it slides out. These are your 2 50 amp poles. Here's your lead 1, your lead 2, your neutral, and one of these is your ground. So when pulling this out, I don't know if you can see it, but there's just a little bit of light back there. If you follow, I'm not even sure if you can see it. Well, that wall right there, that is to my basement. So my inverter, batteries, and automatic transfer switch are all right there. So we're only talking about maybe a foot worth of run. Here is the shore power coming in. This black cord right here with its ground, and it goes around, plugs into the chassis. That's chassis ground. Now I'll have to take those power leads out of the 50 amp breakers. Once you get all of this disconnected, you get your ground, lead 1, lead 2, and your neutral. You loosen up the little plate in the back, and you'll pull this main wire back out. Now if yours is anything like mine, the torque on these was pretty insane. I almost couldn't get it out. Now we'll just back all of this back out through the hole. Out the back of the panel. This is back here some more. When I redo all this, I'm going to do everything where it's not all tangled up. So, sorry for the shaky camera. There you go. that was in the back of there. Now we're going to feed this through the wall, and this is going to go plug into the automatic transfer switch. Should have just, to show you what I got here, this is how I have the automatic transfer switch. Down there is a little hole that I'm feeding the wire through, and I'll grab that in a second. This is how it's going to mount. This is where the batteries and the inverter is all going to mount, down in my basement. And I'm going to pull that wire through and connect it to the generator power, because I'm wiring this in reversed. So now we have shore power coming into the automatic transfer switch. And just for my personal preference, I want to cover everything, including the ground, because I'm going to be having some more wires coming in here, and I don't want any chance of any type of arcing. So I'm going to cover this in electrical tape all the way to the end. Just to be extra safe. So now I'm going to cut these wires down. I got them in the right order. I got red, white, black. Those are going to plug into these terminals here. Once I get these trimmed down and plugged in, then I'll show you exactly what we have, and then we'll feed this wire back through, plug it back into the panel, test the transfer switch, see if I knew what I'm talking about. So as you can see now, we have shore power plugged in, and it's a constant pass through. So you can see the reds match the red, white to black, black to black. Both grounds are going to the ground terminal, and then carrying on through. That'll connect in the exact same place the original shore power was, and then there's a wire going to ground chassis, so that part is never disturbed. And the Furrion transfer switch actually has an external port there for ground, so I can also ground my inverter to the ground chassis of the vehicle. So now we're going to feed this wire back through that hole, and then we're going to plug it back into the AC panel, and then we're going to test out the inverter. Okay, so hopefully the camera doesn't just catch the back of my head. So what I got here is the AC panel, and I did a little test run first so I wouldn't look stupid on camera. But I got the red back into where it originally was. Now I'm going to take the black. This takes a little bit of work. It was quite a bit of work to get it in there, but it didn't give much room for wiggle. But once you get it all the way in, and I tried to cut the insulation as close to it as possible. And I actually got it pretty good. I don't know if the camera can see it. Hopefully it does. So I'm going to take the little set screw, put it right back into here. And these guys were torqued pretty hard. I actually have to take a ratchet to break it free. So there it is. Right back where that was. Next, I'll do the ground, which is all the way in the back here. Tight. The neutral was in this one. Just a little bit more. That's tight. My ground's tight. First lead and the second lead. Now everything is right back to how I had it there. And now I just have my little retaining clip in the back here. I'll install it. So while I'm doing this, I'll explain one of the differences now. So with the Furrion automatic transfer switch, it takes 20 to 30 seconds from the time that it senses power until it actually gives you power. So because I have my shore power now hooked up to the generator, every time I flip power onto the RV, it's going to take about 20 seconds before I get power. I had to do that just because for whatever reason Furrion made it the priority for generator, which I didn't want. If I'm on shore power, I want to be on shore power, not still on generator, or in this case inverter. Just want to get everything back to the way it was before I actually go turn anything on. So there you have it. Now we will go try and turn on the power and see what starts to happen. As you can see, we got a green light here, which shows that we have power. And there's the clunk. So let's go see if we have power. Alright, well, here's the moment of truth. There's power on the transfer switch. Now by switching this 50 amp breaker here, this will show what we have. And just like that, we have power. So that means everything is running through the automatic transfer switch now. So now all that's left is to take the batteries down into the basement. Well, actually, first we'll shut the power back off, and then I'm going to reinstall this panel. After I do that, then we'll go on to the next part. Okay, so I lugged these two batteries down here in the basement on this little platform that I had set up. There's my transfer switch. And I don't really have a whole lot of room left, but this is what I got. Sorry for the shaky camera there. So what I'm going to do is I have these two, and then I have just enough room up on top here as well. So that'll be 4 batteries total. On this wall, I believe right here is where I'm going to put all of my bus bars. So all my batteries, my inverter, and charger will all connect to these bus bars. So I got the negatives and the positives. And I'll mount these up here. And then this, everything's just kind of sitting here temporary, just to kind of test everything. I tested it last night because I wanted to make sure it ran. This is the inverter. And it does turn on. So the next thing we're going to do, now that I know it actually works, because I didn't want to have to install everything and then backtrack. Now that I know it works, what I'm going to do, this is my furnace right here, and my water panel is on the other side. I'm going to run some conduit through here, and then this is where my battery charger, I believe, this is where it's going to go, which is this guy. I haven't even test fit this yet, so I might tell you this is what I'm going to do in the video, then completely change it right now. This is the battery charger. So this is the air vent. So I just have to have the air vent facing out. Like that. So it has just enough room. I'm going to get some strap clamps. So it's not touching on the sides. It's touching a little over there. I can kind of situate it a little bit better. But basically, from what I understand from the manufacturer, is as long as this fan, the fan's going to blow this way. It just needs to be able to blow out. And then on the back side, the reason why I wanted to do that situation was because on the back side, that's where the terminals are for the AC. I wanted to make sure the AC terminals were nowhere near where something could fall on it. Just like that. Okay, back on the view from the other side. Here's my panel for all my utility connections, like city, water, cable, all that stuff. So this is just an outlet, but the receptacle for the charger I'm going to do, it's going to go right here on that panel. So that way I can run an extension cord up here, much like how this one is, and plug it right into the trailer, and that will charge. So I'm going to put it close enough here to where it'll look okay if I put in a second one here, because I might do two. We'll see how it goes. But for now, just one right there. That power cable will go alongside this wall and right there to that battery and charger. Okay, so we have the power shut off again at the breaker. The power cord is even disconnected from the trailer just to make sure that I don't electrocute myself. So what we're going to do now is, again, power out, shore power in. Now this is going to be the inverter in. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to wire that in. And this is just all the cord I need for now, because until I get the rest of my batteries, there is not really a reason to set this thing up permanently, so I'm just setting it up just enough for it to run. That way I can show you guys if it works. I have my 4 wires here. I'm going to loosen that last ground. Now I have to feed this, and it's gonna go. Just gotta get my wires in the right order, like so. I do apologize, it's a pretty tight space down here. So you have to listen to me breathe hard for a little bit. And there we go there. All the wires are where they should be. Now I'm going to screw this thing to the wall. So here I'm going to show you how to wire the charger. So you get the 3 terminals, you get your leg, your system ground, and your equipment ground. Leg, system, equipment. So on the wire here that I cut, the reason why I'll show you why I cut it this way. So same thing, you got your black, which is your hot, your white, which I made a hook out of. This is your system ground, and then your exposed copper, which is equipment ground. So the reason why I did it this way is because I didn't want it to slide out. So the center one, I made it like a hook. So when you take these, you slide them in. I'm going to try to do this one-handed. Almost. There we go. So you can see I cut the wire just long enough to where it's right there. The hot one is just about ready to protrude through, but then it's flush on this side, so I got just enough insulation. This one here, same way. It hooks right around that screw hole, so that way there's insulation all the way up to where I clamp it down, and then the ground doesn't matter because it's exposed. That way there's
the least amount of possibility to get electrocuted accidentally, and then making this hook, hopefully that'll be like an anchor so it doesn't pull out. Now I'll show you how to wire the other side. So what I ended up doing here was the battery cables that came with the inverter I thought were too small. So I went and I got heavier gauge, I believe 2 gauge wire for the inverter, and I'm going to rewire all of that. But my battery charger did not come with supplied wires. So the terminal connectors for the inverter happen to fit perfectly up with my bus bar. And then the other side is a different side, different size, and it fits perfectly with the charger terminal connector. So all I did was I just took my supplied inverter cables and just switched them over to my battery charger, and this is about the right length to go to the bus bar that I'm going to mount on the back wall back there. So that actually worked out pretty good. So I'm going to connect these to the bus bars and hope that I can charge a battery without blowing it up. So connecting these, you see it's on one side. What I wanted to do is flip it around to when it goes on there like this. The reason why I want to do that is because the shield that goes on here, it'll sit down lower if I flip this terminal around, and it just looks a little bit smoother, and I think it'll be easier to actually move it around once it's all connected. So I got these at a slight angle too, just because of the way I'm going to mount it. Doesn't take too much, maybe that's maybe 25 inch-pounds at best. So now we'll go do the charger side. So the battery charger has it labeled right there, which one's red, which one's black. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did on the bus bar. I'm going to lay them down this way. That will allow me to be a little bit smoother, just because it's such a tight space back there. So I got the washer and the bolt. I'm going to come through this way. Then on the other side, I got the lock washer and then the nut. And now we'll tighten it down. So this is how I got it wired. Got your AC in, 48 volt DC out, and I wired them this way to where they run at a 90-degree angle, just because it's going to go up against the back wall and it's going to run along the back wall, so it made more sense to do it this way. So it's connected to the bus bar. Let's go back, turn it on. Hopefully we don't blow any batteries up. So now that I got this wired up, I'll show you what I did here. So I went ahead and threw a little bit of electrical tape on the neutral and the hot, just for added insulation. But this is, even though it's covered and you can't see it now, this is the black. But also on this particular one, they label the screw as black. You flip it on the other side, the screw is white, and on the bottom, screw is green. So that way you know exactly where it's all going. So now, if we plug this in to an extension cord, it should work. Alright, so here's my cord. I'm going to plug it into here. And hopefully, we will see something come alive over there. So, it does look like this sucks. I thought it was going to blow that way, but it doesn't really matter either way. So it blows out the back. It sounds like when it's connected, it's not a smart fan, a thermally controlled fan. It sounds like it just runs constantly no matter what the load is. That might be a little annoying I don't know if I'll be able to hear that or not upstairs, because it is kind of a loud fan, but it's only going to be that way when it's plugged in to charge. And this is just a secondary backup charge, because this will be the primary charge. So I'm not really too worried about it, and I doubt that pulls too much power. That's just a little computer CPU fan. So far, not really sure what it's. I guess it's working. I guess it's one of those things where I just leave it plugged in and we'll see in a little while if the battery actually went up or not. I believe the charge voltage is supposed to be a little bit higher than that, so I may have to adjust it. It didn't come with a manual. It's kind of the only downside, so I might actually have to go online and download the manual. Okay, so I ended up figuring out what it was. And right now we are at 50, it went up just a little bit because I had the charger on. 55.4. So back here is a little set screw. And I noticed before the green light was on and then it was off. So what I did was I went in here, there's a really small screw. You can adjust the voltage. You get the green light. This is how you can adjust the range. And when the green light kicks on, you can hear a hum. So you can tell that it's actually charging now at 1500 watts. And then also the voltage went up to 56.7, 56.8. So we are actually putting power back into the battery. So that's how you adjust that. I don't know if the voltage is going to keep climbing and I have to come out here and tune it down. Right now I have the charger set all the way to max. The charge voltage on these batteries is 58.8, and the voltage is climbing just a little bit right now. But right now we're definitely safe. We're nowhere near overcharging the battery. 57, so I'll keep an eye on it. We got another 1.8 volts to go before it's at peak voltage, but right now 57, I'm comfortable with that. Alright, so it's also important to remember what I saw here with that dial in the back. I was trying to figure out how much power I was actually using. So I had a kilowatt meter laying around. I don't know if you can read this or not. So we're sitting at about almost 1500 watts. So I had the voltage meter cranked all the way on this, and I felt the cord was getting pretty hot. So I plugged this in here and the meter showed that I was actually pulling 1850 watts and it was going into overload. So I tuned the dial back, the little set screw that I showed you on the back of this, and I tuned it back, tuned the voltage back until I finally got within an acceptable safe range of about 1500 watts. So if you buy this particular model, it's important to remember that you don't just have it cranked all the way, because it does in fact put out more wattage than what it's capable of. So it's rated for 1500 watts, it was putting out 1800. So I throttled that back quite a bit just to be safe. Also, I checked the voltage with no load, no battery. The unit itself, if it just sits here and runs, it pulls 12 watts of AC. So not a lot, but that's all it pulls. So here you can see where I wired into the shunt. This is what's going to monitor how much power is coming in and out. And I bent that wire to where it molded around this corner and to where it came out here. Because once I bend this again, that's where my negative terminal will be. And to show you, it's good to, especially in a tight spot like that. I don't know if you can see it with all the background. There you go. I pre-bent everything and measured, so that way it's easier to actually get it back there. That way it's not just loose wire. Another good thing to have is if you get the shrink wrap, that's also good to have on there. Because we're using pretty big terminals and pretty big wire. This will help keep it all secure and clean. Okay, so now I have this piece that I made. It's all pre-bent. It's supposed to go behind the battery, like here in the corner. If I measure all this out right, it goes right there. So this is the positive. And I have some red electrical tape that I'm going to use to outline this one, so that way I know for sure that I don't mess this up when I go to connect it. Where's the other check? Here we go. There's that. Now, take the cover. That protects that. So now, I'm going to go over here. These are two different lengths. The positive is longer, the negative is shorter. The reason why I did that was because the way that the inverter is going to sit, negative is going to be closer. So let's start finishing this up and get some power. So I have the inverter sitting up there right now, which is not how it's going to be permanently mounted, because when I get two more of these batteries, I'm going to double stack them. Then I'm going to get a piece of wood over the front, and then the inverter is going to mount to the front. But for right now, just ops check it, and I still have to figure out where to put the solar inverter and the battery charger. But for now, I just want to know that it works, because it'll be a month or two before I get the rest of the system. So over here on these terminals, I'll get a flashlight. So you'll have your hot 1, neutral, hot 2, and ground. And if you remember on the panel, inside the AC panel, hot 1 was black, neutral was white, hot 2 is red, and then ground. So this is the inverter power to the transfer switch right there. And then these red and black cables, this is just to the battery charger. And this is just temporary also until I can figure out where I want to mount it. I don't know if I want to mount it up here, out of the way, or what. But for now, it'll work. So I'm going to put the camera down, put those into here. It's just a simple insert the wire into the bottom, just like a breaker. And you tighten a flathead at the top. And I'll show you what it's like when it's done, and hopefully we can test it out. So here we are. We have the battery terminals connected, the automatic transfer switch connected, and also the battery charger connected. We'll turn that on later. And all the circuit breakers for the batteries are on. So now we're going to test this out, turn it on, and hope for the best. Now it's got a nice little hum, so let's go see if it works. Okay, so we're gonna throw the 50 amp breaker. Let's see. Nope, that didn't work.
All right, so I have some good news and I also have some bad news. The good news is I did not fry anything. With as horrible as that breaker sounded when I flipped it, somehow I was fast enough to hit it that I shut it off before anything bad happened, and I actually did smell some electrical smoke. I went through, re-inspected everything, couldn't find anything bad, so I think I caught it just enough in time to where nothing bad happened. So what caused it was I had a electrician come out. He looked over everything that I did. He said everything was fine except for one little error, and that is in the actual inverter itself. The manufacturer on these terminals where you plug in your 50 amp 4-wire, those are wired incorrectly. So what should have been hot, neutral, hot, ground, where it was supposed to be neutral was actually a hot. And if you see the white wire going in now, the white wire is going into a hot, which is, that white wire is supposed to be neutral. So what I ended up doing was going online, and I found another customer who had purchased this inverter. He went through 3 inverters. The manufacturer sent him 3 total. All 3 were wired incorrectly. So somehow, fortunately, I was fast enough to where I shut this thing down before it short-circuited itself bad enough to where it burned up. But if you buy this inverter, make sure, or any inverter for that fact, check the leads to make sure that your hots are where they're supposed to be hot and your neutrals are supposed to be where they're neutral, because mine was not correct, and that could have been a very, very bad situation where it not only destroyed my inverter, but it also could have destroyed some electrical equipment in my RV. It could have been a very expensive day had I not been standing there to shut that breaker off when I was. It was very, very lucky. So it's nothing that I did. So I know the video looked really bad there for a second, like I really blew something up, but it was not my fault. The inverter company wired this thing wrong. And as it turns out, I'm not the only one. They have done this to multiple other inverters. So hopefully this is not the start of a bad experience with this inverter. I did buy this off Amazon, but I did buy the 4-year service plan. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm a little disappointed with it so far, but I mean, it's working now. So right now I have it powering the entire RV. So I'll go walk around and show you that. So here we are inside the RV. One of the things I'll show you is the microwave, because if the pure sine wave inverter is not pure sine enough, you will hear this in the microwave, because it won't sound smooth. And there you go. Sounds normal. So that works. Now we're going to go with something bigger. We're going to turn on an AC to high. There you go. I am on air conditioning. I'm not going to get too crazy because I only got 2 batteries, but I do want to show you that down here, the little screen will show you what the percentage is. The percentage of load. My battery voltage is still holding up very well. And I just want to check and see for myself what percentage of load is. So running an air conditioner unit is only taking up 8%
of this this inverter's load. That's it, just 8%. And that's running the air conditioner. So we're gonna go ahead and turn this off now. So next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna plug this back in. Now it's about 25 seconds before the automatic transfer switch will switch back over. We're going to test this and see if it switches from inverter back to shore power. There it goes. Now it's switched back. So the automatic transfer switch does in fact work. Now we're going to plug in the charger. Okay, so now we have our charger, and we're going to drill a 1 3/4 hole right here. So it goes right there. There's nothing really on the back side to worry about. That's going to run along here. There's a little wall that goes right here. I just took it out to work. That's going to power the charger. And you want to use this little guy to cut your hole nice and round so it slips in. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and line this up. There's nothing behind it. Get it fairly in the center. And about there. Just double checking there's no wires. That's actually pretty close to center. Alright, so that is beautiful. Just like that. Then we'll put the screws in there. That'll hold it. And when I get the second one, that'll go there if I decide to go that way. Yeah, but this is good. I like it. Okay. Let's wire it. Okay, so now we're going to take these wires here, black, white, ground, and then if you buy this particular cap on Amazon, which I'll put my parts list in, there is a black screw, a white screw, and a green screw. So it should be pretty easy to figure out where the white and black wire goes. That comes through here. Okay, now we're just going to plug these right back into where I originally had them. Ground, white, black. Just like that. Tighten down the little set screws. I believe it's 25 inch-pounds was what the manual called for. So, not too tight. Okay, now if you'll look, the rubber gasket on the back, you'll want to line that up with the holes in the front. And then twist this thing around to where you want to have it. And also, I should also note that on your white and black wires, cut the insulation just enough to where you cannot see the wires. I did that just to be as safe as possible. I made sure I got my cut exactly to where it needed to be. Then you take the supplied screws, get this exactly straight to where to the way you want it. I'll move the camera for you here. That's pretty straight right there. Of course, tighten this down away. Don't want to do it too much because it's only a thin wall of fiberglass back there. If you're screwing into the same panel I am, it doesn't take hardly anything. You'll strip that out. I actually have my torque settings set to like 5, so should not come close enough to stripping it out. Even then, I'm still not putting it all the way to max. And that, now that's straight. That's pretty good. It's got a nice little rubber cap on it. It's right underneath my power panel. Like I said, I would have put this more center, but I really feel like I'm going to put a second one, so I just did it there just in case if I were to do, because you know I can't, you know, move that later. So pretty confident I'm going to do a second one there. So I already know the inverter works, but I'm going to go ahead and plug it in anyways just to double off check it after doing all this work. I'm also going to put this little wall back in, this little partition wall. Okay, here we go. So we're plugged in. I have a kilowatt meter here, and I'm getting this to make sure I am not exceeding what the cord can do. Because this inverter says it'll do 1500 watts, that's what it's rated for, but I've actually seen it do more than that. When I had it plugged in the other day, it actually went all the way up to 1800 watts, which is way too much. So I'm going to plug this in. Okay, so 1800 watts is what this thing's pulling right now. So I need to get back there. There's a set screw and I need to adjust that. So I'm going to do that real quick. Okay, so this is the charger. It just takes the teeny tiny little flathead to adjust it in the back. And I already showed you before, it's just a little teeny tiny set screw back there by that green light. Green light indicates that there is a flow going from AC to the battery. Down here, like I was trying to say, it is the most minute amount of adjustment to get that charger to bounce from a low charge to a high charge in watts. So it's pretty difficult to get it exactly where you want it. It's gone down a little bit, but I pretty much had it at 1400 watts there. It's a 1500 watt charger. I figured with a little bit of safety factored in, I was okay with 1400 watts. Yeah, it does not take much. I mean, we're talking probably a couple widths of a hair, and it jumps all the way to 1800 watts of charge, which in this thing just starts going in the overload. But yeah, so about 1400 watts right now going back in the battery bank. So I am charging and inverting at the same time. I'll put all this back together, make it look nice. For the most part, that's it until we get the solar. Okay, well that's pretty much it for now. There's 2 batteries, a charger inverter, and a transfer switch all installed. And it's not that big. Again, 5,600 watts of storage in lithium ion, 6,000 watt 50 amp inverter, a 2-pole 50 amp transfer switch, and a 1,500 watt 48 DC volt battery charger. This all came with wires and everything, probably about $3,800 total. Then I still have to buy the charge controller for the solar, and then 2 more batteries and more panels. So we'll make that next.
But for now, this is what we got. About $3,600, $3,800 later. So I'll let you know how it all works out.